Hello and welcome to the Angerati studio at Charge 2016, where we're actually joined by Jim Rogers. And if you don't know him, well, he was former CEO at Duke Energy, and has also published a book on sustainable energy and lighting up the developing world. So, Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. It's been great to be here in Iceland and focus on energy branding.
Okay, and you actually chaired the opening session at the event, which I think is a very poignant message. What's your experience been so far of the event, some of the themes you've heard and the discussions that have been had?
I think they've done an excellent job of really first talking about the concept of branding and then bringing it down to how does it really apply to an energy company? How does it apply to a power company? What can they really do differently? And it's really a challenging question because most power companies are state-owned in most countries. In the US, 70% of the electricity comes from investor-owned utilities. So there's a mix of power companies around the world, but being more focused on the customer is really a critical and important thing to do.
Okay, well, you've been doing a lot of work recently in sustainable energy for all. It's kind of one of your key drivers before you actually left Duke, and is a current issue for you going forward. So tell us, why this is so important to you. What makes you tick in that sector? What's the thing that gets you going around sustainability?
Sure, I've spent 25 years as a CEO. The world has changed a lot in 25 years in the power sector. I've had to reinvent myself along the way. And now as I stand here and look into the future, what I really see is that if we can't build sustainable companies, we won't provide value for all our stakeholders, for our investors, for our customers, for our employees, for the suppliers to the company, for the environment, unless we have a longer term, more sustainable focus.
Okay, and your recent book, obviously, focusing on lighting up the developing world. It's a very interesting theme, right? You've come from, well, largely you've come from America in that sense, right? And you've worked in a fairly modernized grid. What makes you pick out that, the developing world as a ripe space for the next set of work you'll be engaged in, and also, is this an opportunity for the power and utility sector as large?
I think the way that I think about it, in life you'd like to match up purpose with your focus. And the purpose that I see in focusing on this is that I am stunned actually, by the fact that 1.2 billion people have no access to electricity. And how did we miss? Why have we failed them? What can be done to help? Because access to electricity enables better education, better medical care, better economic development, more efficient farming. It's transformative to the people. And I learned this, not because I've been without electricity, but I look back at the United States in the 1910s and 20s, when not all people had access to electricity. I looked at the impact it had on women. There was a great article written about women in Texas, in rural areas, on ranches, how it transformed their lives. I actually think in the low-income countries around the world with no access, that it will, most importantly, it will translate into greater equality for women. Greater equality for women will transform those villages and local communities. It will lift up not just this generation, but future generations. So I'm almost a missionary in the sense, actually my brother was a missionary in Latin America. And I used to tease him that, yeah, you bring light to people, but I'm bringing real light. And I think people want both, and what they really want is they need electricity to transform their lives, and it just hasn't happened for them yet. And for me, I want to put my energy into help making that happen.
Okay, so this isn't about some grand scheme about empowering business opportunities for, say, power and utilities. It's actually about fixing a real problem that exists.
Absolutely, and you know what? I don't think power companies from the US or from Europe really have the ability to come into those countries and understand the dynamics, the role of the government, to understand how consumers behave in those areas. You know, the people that have been most effective doing this have been young entrepreneurs who've started companies. But what they've done is they've come in a humble way, and they first listen to people. Then they try to engage them on the issue and try to work to see if they're interested in solving it. So they engage them. Then they try to attract them. If they attract them, they want to then train them. And then once they're trained, they empower them to lead. So you're creating leaders in all these communities, but at the same time, you're building a business. You know, one reason I wrote the book is because I wanted to inspire young entrepreneurs to go do this. I really wanted to wake up governments in these countries and say, you need to solve this rural electrification problem in your country.
Okay, so granted, we are actually at an energy branding conference, so inevitably I would bring it back to this. I do love the story, though. I'm originally from Nigeria, so I appreciate the context of a country that doesn't necessarily have a working power grid. And you're right, you know, it's a serious problem, but we're at a branding conference, so needs must. Is it possible that there is a lesson here, you know, just as you're saying, the companies that will go into, you know, into underdeveloped or developing countries to electrify those rural networks, and in the way that they will have to relearn learn customer engagement, learn how to understand. Is that almost a lesson for the utilities in the advanced countries already who are now having to redefine their business because of disruption and relearn engagement? Is there?
That's actually a really great observation. I mean, think about it. I mean,
Thank you.
Electricity is ubiquitous around the world. I mean, not around the world, but in these high-income countries, like the US, like Europe. It's actually taken for granted. And actually, state-owned utilities don't do a very good job of engaging customers. They don't have to recruit them. They've been connected to the grid for decades. And so the only question is delivering the electricity in a reliable way. But I think the thing that, to your point, if these companies went into these remote areas, they would learn how to provide electricity in a different culture, different interconnection, different way to connect with people. But the other thing, and I think one of the reasons I wrote the book, is I believe there's a great leapfrogging opportunity in these remote areas. You first learn to bring solar, whether it's solar lanterns, small home solar, or microgrid. You also learn to deploy not high energy TV sets, but low energy. So the demand for ultra efficient appliances, whether it's TVs or fans or radios, are really required in this environment. I think the high-income countries could learn a lot from the deployment of renewables and the integration, but also learn a lot about how to market ultra-efficient appliances, which translates in lower use, greater environmental benefit going forward.
Okay, well, before we bring things to a close, I think it's only fair that I ask you what your proudest moment has been so far. It will be your birthday tomorrow.
Yes.
Well, depending on whatever time it is you actually watch this interview. The day after this was shot would actually be Jim's birthday, so happy birthday in advance.
Oh, thank you very much.
But after a long and actually still ongoing career in the energy sector, what's your proudest moment been?
I think that my proudest moment has really been all those different, it's not just one moment, it's many moments when I've worked with people, and between us working together, we develop a shared vision of the way forward. And those proudest moments are predicated on a shared vision that's much different than where we came. And you know, that idea of sitting and working with people and trying to invent the future or reinvent where you're going, the process of doing that is very stimulating to me. You're sitting there going, pretty easy as a CEO to sit with people and reinvent, right?
Hey, I didn't say that.
Yeah, but you were thinking it. I could feel it. But I'm now teaching at Duke University and working with young students and thinking about, well, how do they reinvent their future? How do they find a mission in their life by providing electricity around the world, whether it's in high income or low income countries? So that the ability to work with others to find the way forward is that whole series of minutes and hours and days and weeks and months and years have been the part that's been the most motivating. And quite frankly, it's what I miss the most.
Oh, wow. Well, I think that's probably the perfect place to bring this interview to a close. So thank you so much, Jim. And thank you as well for tuning into this interview. If you'd like to find out more about Jim's book, we'll be putting a link at the bottom of the page where you can actually access that. Please also check out the wider interviews from Charge 2016 on your page, and feel free to share this inspirational piece with your colleagues and as far as you can. Thank you.